Today I'm going to tell you a story, a personal favorite of mine. Well, based off of a personal favorite of mine. I did a little bit of editing here and there. It's from a book called French Folktales from the Pantheon collection. And the name of the original story is Red Eyes. And I love the beginning of the story, but I find the end a little bit dull, so I've changed the end and renamed it Guide to Bort. So let's begin. There was a girl, a country merchant's pretty young daughter named Elise. Her father had to go off to a great, splendid fair, a fair he couldn't possibly miss. "I'll be back Tuesday," said he. "Or latest Wednesday, or Thursday for sure. Go fetch your cousin from the village. She'll keep you company." He was a widower, you see, and the girl was his only child. Their house stood all alone in a pasture by a spring, in a little grove of rowan trees alive with thrushes. Everywhere else was woods, woods, woods. Elise went for her cousin Marie, which made her late. Then the two dawdled in the house and had to struggle to finish their work in the stable. When they got back to the hearth, the fire was out. They had to go for fire to the nearest neighbors, 500 long paces away. They ran off thinking they'd closed all the doors, but there were so many, many doors. Back they rushed with some live coals and a broken clog. When they'd left, the light had been fading and the marsh hawks crying. It was night when they got home, amid the hooting of owls. From a bend in the path, Marie saw a shadow slip past the house. And from the spring she thought she saw a hay barn door pull shut. This was dusk, though, when you no longer know what you're seeing, or what you can believe. Anyway, Elise, walking with her head lowered against the wind, hadn't seen such a thing. "I won't tell her," thought her cousin. "People these days are talking about a robber in a fox-skin cap and russet cloak, the famous Jean de Bort. Maybe he's lurking in the woods with his gang. She'll be frightened if I talk. No, it's my own eye that made that shadow, a fleck in my eye. And the door, why, we must simply have forgotten to close it, and the wind blew it shut." Actually, Marie went straight to the window as soon as they'd gotten inside and barred the door. Yonder, at the edge of the hay, she'd noticed a pair of shoes. She told herself they were her uncle's. The two girls ate and drank a little wine. The wind was howling in the chimney and whistling at all the windows. The blazing fire they lit did nothing to light the blackness of the night. "The best thing we can do is go to bed," said Marie, bending down to take off her stockings. In the shadows under the bed, she saw two red eyes watching her. The face was a man's, but the eyes of brute beasts. They were shining and staring right at her. Shivering, she put her stockings back on. "Oh," she cried, "my nightcap. I'll never be able to sleep without my nightcap. I'll have to go get it." "But you can have mine," said Elise, "my prettiest one. You'd be mad to go out at night in this storm." No, I must. Marie opened the door as she spoke, drew her cloak around her, and ran down the steps. "You're crazy, cousin, you're crazy," shouted Elise behind her. But the girl had disappeared into the night. Elise went to bed, but she couldn't sleep. She didn't dare even turn over. "It's 11 now, and there goes midnight," thought she. "Dear God, take me under your care. How long a whole night can be." Suddenly she heard something stir beneath her. At the instant felt a prick from below, as though a pin had been stuck up through the mattress. But she was brave and didn't cry out. Out crawled the man and stood up, then leaned over her in the dark. Elise saw his red eyes, but pretended to be asleep. He understood she would stay as still as a log, And what good would it have done her to struggle or cry out? There was no ear to hear her, no arm to give her help. The man felt himself the master of the place, master, too, of the whole countryside and of the night. He was in no hurry. He went to the fire, lit the lantern, and brought the light to the girl's face, close enough to singe her eyelashes. Elise went on sleeping. But she stole a peek at him while his back was turned. She recognized Jean de Bort, the robber captain, the murderer. There was his fox fur cap with the fox's tail and his russet coat. He, meanwhile, made himself at home. He laid his big pistols down on the table and his cutlass beside them. Then, humming a tune, he poured himself some wine, which he drank as he gazed around the room. Next, he went to the door, drew from his shirt a little silver whistle, and blew it in from the doorway as though to call in all his companions skulking through the woods in the depth of the night. He even took 3 steps to whistle again, so the sound should carry properly. All at once he jumped. The door had slammed behind him, as though by a gust of wind. He hurled himself against it, only to hear the bolt shoot home on the other side. The only answer he got when he shook it was a sigh and a laugh. Then he thundered threats. "Take care, my pretty, take care. You better not laugh at Jean de Bort. I'll smash the door. I'll take off your head." That's how he roared at first, battering at the door with his fists. Then he caught his breath and ran his hand around his face. "Listen, girl," he said in a very different tone. "I'll go away. But first you must give me back my weapons. You'll be a thief, girl, if you don't. I'll leave if you give them back. I promise. I swear. Now crack open the door and we'll shake on it." "No, I won't. If you want to shake on it, put your hand in under the door." He did so. "Oh, once I've got your little white hand in mine, my dear," said he to himself, "nothing will ever make me let it go." Then he screamed. All he retrieved from under the door was his wrist, spurting with blood like a fountain. She chopped off his hand with the cutlass. "You swine," he howled. "You'll regret this, I swear. The day will come when you beg for mercy, you merchant's wench. And mercy is the last thing that you'll get." He wrapped his wrist in his russet cloak and staggered down the steps as though drunk. At the bottom he sank to the ground. His robber companions, who were running up the house, made him a chair with their hands and carried him off into the woods. They were no doubt camping there in the depths of some cave. "I swear it," he thundered again in a terrifying voice as he went. "You'll remember Jean de Bort." On the 3rd day the merchant rode home. Below the hill he slowed his horse to a walk and stopped on the village square. He'd spotted the cousin on her way to the well, carrying a green pitcher. "Hey," he cried, "aren't you with my daughter?" "Your daughter," she retorted. "Your daughter has more welcome company than mine. When we got back to the house that evening, I saw her lover steal inside, and that night, when I took off my stockings, I saw him hiding under the bed. So I made myself scarce. Yes, goodbye to the likes of her. I went home." "Do you know what you're saying, girl?" "I'm saying what I saw right there before me. I saw the man's eyes under the bed, shining red like a hare's, like those possessed of the beast himself." The merchant galloped off like one possessed, like a storm of thunder and hail. He leapt up the stairs in 3 bounds and burst through the door. His daughter lifted her skirt, as always, to greet her father with 3 curtsies. With one blow he stretched her out on the ground and raised his boot to smash its heel into her face. "You wretch," he cried, "is it true what your cousin says? A lover came and hid you under the bed?" "Oh, yes, my father. It's true. A lover came. You've shamed me, and you're shamed as well. Everyone in the village will be talking about it, and a single young man will ask for your hand. Very well. I'll give you my lover's hand." She took the bloody hand from the table, and with it the pistols and the cutlass. "You do me wrong, father," she said. When he grasped the truth, he begged her forgiveness and swore a great oath to guard her from Jean de Bort, that he'd never leave her alone again till she was married. Months crept by, then a year, then 2. No one around wanted to get mixed up with the robber band. The young men of the village feared Jean de Bort, and none would have dared ask to marry the merchant's daughter. The awful threat weighed upon her. Everyone said the robber captain would surely be back one night to take revenge. Though the nicer neighbors felt sorry for the merchant and his daughter, they wouldn't have done anything for them. Others kept out of their way and were ready to betray them. The merchant kept one eye open all night, every night, and during the day he opened both eyes, but his caution cost the girl dearly, who had never realized it. This life of watching and waiting wasn't a life at all. There came one evening another merchant who lost his way in the meadows and ended up wandering through the woods. A merchant, yes, but dressed all in black, with a feather in his hat and wearing gloves like a lord. On his horse's back rode a great chest. Having asked for a bit of bread and a glass of water, he got a saddle of hair and a bottle of wine. They wanted to know the way, and when the moon would rise. The father told him there would be no moon and offered to let him stay the night. What with his staff of servants, he felt strong enough. Besides, his pistols were never out of his belt, and he watched over his daughter every minute he breathed. Anyway, this merchant didn't look at all like a cut-purse or a highwayman. He got up, ate his breakfast, and before leaving, drank with his host to the new day and the road before him. He opened his chest and now had a gift for each. For the father a belt of buffalo hide, and for the daughter a pair of scissors covered with gold. The scissors fell and struck point down on the floor. As far as Elise was concerned, the man's company oppressed her. He kept after her until she had to accept a silver chain and a gilded thimble as well. He promised he'd be back. He did return, with his chest filled more richly than ever. He unpacked it on the table. It wasn't just ribbons or satin this time, but jewelry, precious stones, garnets, and amethysts. Do you see these earrings? He asked. And these necklaces. I've a fine selection of laces, too. Take some, pretty miss. Take all that you want. He drank to the father's health and spread out his wealth. He drank to the daughter's and asked to marry her. Give me her hand, he said. I promise I'll make her happy. Elise hardly knew what to say. Her heart was not singing. You might as well marry him, as another, her father advised. He's rich, filthy rich. Yes, she replied, too rich for us. Why doesn't he ever take off his gloves? That's the way fancy people are, and what a match for you. I don't want to marry you off in the village, and he's worth 100 times any of our local boys. Well, she told herself, it's true, I'm afraid, but I may as well go meet whatever's coming. At least father won't have to live this way anymore. And as for me, who knows? I'll see what's in store. Her father kept pressing her, and in a trice it was done. On Friday evening, the engagement, and on Saturday morning, the wedding. Down the path strolled the newlyweds, the bride and the groom. He told her he'd had letters from his home far away. Urgent business called him there. Bridle my horse, he said, as soon as the wedding feast was over. I'll saddle him myself. My wife will ride behind me. We're off this minute. They sat down over the mountain. She sighed as they entered the woods and wept as the thickets closed around them. Goodbye, goodbye, O house of my father. Goodbye, O Guy, place where I was born. What is it, my dear? What's troubling you? Why are you sad? It's just that I want to know why you never take off the glove on your right hand, not even here, deep in the woods. I never take it off because I don't want you to see what my hands look like. But now, in the woods, yes, I'll take it off for you. He did so, and he lifted his hand. It was made of iron. She shook in terror and shock as he stroked her face with it and knocked her to the ground. Now do you recognize Jean de Bort? Ah, you wretch, my hour has come, the hour of my revenge. She fought against him, but he bound her to an oak tree. His face was in a fury, and her hair in a tangle. Snarl, my pretty one, he said. You'll only distort your face. When I return with my band, you'll have something real to howl about. He leaned in close, grinning like a wildcat. She caught the ruby glint of his eyes and the warm breath of his laugh before she turned her head in disgust. When she lifted up her head, he was gone. The humid day was waning, and her hair felt sticky over her brow. She couldn't weep now. She had to escape before his return. When that would be, no one could say. Elise struggled against her restraints, but they were cleverly tied. Jean de Bort was a master thief, after all, but he was prone to underestimate her. Her sewing pouch, with the scissors that had marked her betrayal inside, was still hidden under her light jacket, tied to a woven leather belt. She reached for it, but her awkwardly twisted hands could only nudge the bottom of her purse. With great effort, she squeezed her fingers together and pulled at it. To her horror, the purse released from the belt and its contents spilled to the grass below. There were the gold scissors, gleaming in the lowering sun, just out of her grasp. But they were still her last chance. She pushed herself lower on the tree. The ropes twisted against her, and the gnarled oak snagged at her dress. She kicked off her shoes and with nimble toes lifted the scissors. It took time to hack away the thick rope with the delicate blade, time she wasn't sure she had. The sun sunk deeper, and she was sure she heard horses' hooves in the distance. Jean de Bort, Jean de Bort. The more fiercely she cut, the more the blade resisted. She had to be patient and cut each thread one by one. More hooves in the distance, coming closer as the sun sunk lower in the sky. She forced herself to focus, and finally the last thread was broken and she burst free from the oak. And to her horror, a horse broke through the thicket. Only it wasn't him, it wasn't Jean de Bort, but a young soldier returning from duty. Elise felt her body slipping out from under her from exhaustion and relief, but she forced herself to stand upright and call to the soldier. All she managed to say was, Jean de Bort. The young man nodded and seemed to understand. He lifted her onto his horse, and they fled as the dusk fell. She had a sudden foreboding, but he was one of Jean's henchmen. She could trust no one now, but she was free of that wretched oak and Jean's odious presence. While they stopped at the spring, she washed her dirty hands and face by the moonlight, while the soldier watered his horse. Her eyes darted to his hand as he pulled something from his side. It was only a flask of wine. He took a deep swig and then took a cup from the packet of the horse's side and filled it. He held it out to her. Her brow furrowed. She stared him in the eye as she lifted the cup to her lips. She then dropped the cup, and the wine spilled to the earth. At first he scowled. Watch it. I don't have much left. Then it seemed to dawn on him, and his expression softened. Listen, I have no wish to poison you. I'm not Jean de Bort, and I'm certainly not one of his henchmen. Don't say that name, she whispered. Then how about this one? Leon. I'm Leon Dupont. He held out his hand. Elise looked at it like a foreign object, then took it softly and nodded, and they continued on their way. For several days she traveled with Leon, who was returning from duty to visit his mother on her farm in a distant valley. As they traveled further, her suspicions faded, and she felt a long-held tension slip away as the landscape altered from dense woods to sloping green hills and snow-peaked mountains. We found an abandoned shed where, on the hard, damp earth, she slept her first dreamless sleep in years. That's when they wandered to a small cottage perched at the foot of the mountain. Leon let out a shrill whistle that echoed around him, and a herd of goats flooded around them like so many children. A small woman with knotted hands, Leon's mother, walked beaming towards them with a shaggy dog at her feet. Leon led Elise inside, and that night, by a warm fire, she told Leon and his mother her story, that she'd been married in a church to Jean de Bort. Leon only whistled, but Madame Dupont's voice grew hoarse. I know his kind, and I've known many worse besides. These mountains are flooded with thieves, but my eyes and senses are still keen, dear, and you're safe here with me. A week later, Leon left for duty. He kissed his mother and bowed somewhat mournfully to Elise. I've never seen him bow before, said his mother, chuckling. They waited the year through, herding and milking the goats or making cheese in the dairy. With each passing day, Elise felt more at home, though she could never be perfectly at ease, not while Jean de Bort roamed this earth. Elise often drove the herd to the mountains, and resting on a high plateau, she would look over the land, wondering where her home was. Though Jean de Bort still haunted her, and perhaps always would, she thought more of Leon and wondered when he would return. Mule drivers came by from time to time, and Madame Dupont offered them shelter. She comforted Elise and told her she could see right through a man and not to worry, but on those nights Elise slept in the dairy. About a year after Leon's departure, Madame Dupont fell seriously ill. Elise tended to her carefully. The old lady finally overcame the worst of it, but was confined to bed. One afternoon, while Elise sat reading to Madame Dupont with the shaggy dog at her feet, we had a commotion outside. Madame Dupont's eyes lit up. Go see, child. Perhaps as my son has returned to us." Elise leapt to the door. In the distance she made out several mule drivers, one of whom she recognized, but no Leon. As they approached, they waved Leon's coat in the air. "He's dead," she thought to herself, and she went cold. But no, "Young madam," they called. "Leon has been promoted in the wars. He'll be here in 3 days' time." "He's coming home," she heard from the old lady's bedroom. "He sent us ahead with his chest of goods and cloth." A mule pulled up with a heavy load on its back. Elise rushed to help them, and the 3 of them dragged the chest inside. Elise pulled at the lid. "It's locked," she said, disappointed. "Don't worry, dear madam," said the driver, handing her the coat. "Leon has the key, and he'll be home shortly. He gave us this coat so you would know we came from him." They went on their way, while Elise ran to tell Madame Dupont the news. When she came back, the shaggy dog was circling the chest and snarling. She reached out her hand to calm him, but he jumped back and sniffed and barked and barked and sniffed. A wave of fear ran through her. She knelt down and peeked through a crack in the wire. She saw nothing, but caught a strange, humid scent. She listened. Someone was breathing in there. Elise jumped back, knocking over a chair. Her hand was over her mouth to stifle a scream. Madame Dupont shuffled in, white as a ghost. "I told you I could sense evil, and I sense it here. Quick, Leon's old blade by the door." Shaking, Elise picked up the sword and handed it to Madame Dupont. The old woman picked up the sword and unsheathed it. "Stop!" cried Elise. "If you don't snuff out evil by the root, it will return. Time and time again," said Madame Dupont. "I know," said Elise. She took the sword from the old lady and plunged her through the planks. A scream, high and shrill, shook the foundations of the cottage, and blood ran red on the flagstones. Together they broke open the chest and found Jean de Bort, curled inside, his red eyes extinguished. That evening we heard a pounding at the door, and Elise gazed up in alarm. The thieves! But no, it was Leon, back from the war and gasping for air. "You're alive," he cried, grabbing both their hands and crying with relief. "They held me prisoner and took my coat to fool you." He saw the chest at his feet with the body inside. "But I should have known you could not be fools." "No, Elise has fooled him," said Madame Dupont, "and twice." They got word that the mule drivers, 2 of de Bort's henchmen, were captured in the town, and the rest of the band were rounded up or converted to a better life in secret, leaving their past behind them. Elise, Leon, and Madame Dupont lived happily in the mountains. Elise no longer lived in fear, though she kept her wits about her. With her herd of goats and her dog at her feet, she patrolled the mountains, keeping it free of thieves and the legacy of Jean de Bort.